Guys, we've talked about some of the most thrilling comebacks of the year, some of the very best individual performances. But I think this game that we're going to talk about today is just maybe one of my flat-out favorite games of the year. It was never really in doubt. The Thunder absolutely thumped the Houston Rockets at home 113-92 back on January 9th. It was such a triumphant day in OKC. Returning from a long East Coast road trip, it was the debut of the 2020 City Edition jerseys, national TV game. Russell Westbrook returns to OKC for the first time, and OKC just manhandled them. Guys, but put me into that arena. What were you feeling? What was happening in terms of the buzz inside Chesapeake Energy Arena that night?
It was special, Nick. I mean, there are certain games historically through the Thunder history that stand out. The one probably foremost is their first playoff game against the Lakers, where the players came out of the tunnel and they were in awe some 20 minutes before tip-off, and everybody was on their feet. Every seat was filled. I don't know that we'll ever replicate that. It was one of those magnificent moments that won't ever go from memory. But this one had its own aura about it. It was Russ's return. I think the city was excited to really appreciate Russell Westbrook for what he had meant to this franchise and how he had stood by this franchise through the years. I thought the organization did a phenomenal job with the video tribute they did to him. The fans were really into it and revved up. And that fueled the home team, because the Thunder jumped on the Rockets and led 37-21 after a quarter. And honestly, they never looked back. Russ, to his credit, I thought played with an even demeanor. He was grounded. He was having fun with the crowd, regardless of what the scoreboard said. Had a big game with 34, but Harden got to the foul line only 5 times. The team really locked him down. They locked down the Rockets on the perimeter and played as strong a game as they have all season. But the atmosphere was one that I honestly feel blessed to have been a part of, to have an opportunity to experience that night.
Yeah, it all came down to the anticipation, because it almost felt like a playoff game with that kind of anticipation, which was a formal thank you for 11 years of a relationship, to where the outcome of the game almost became secondary to honoring the relationship between the city, the fans, and Russ. And I think everybody wanted to be there. I don't know about you guys. I had a ton of ticket requests, probably more than any other game that I've been a part of. I mean, everybody just wanted to be there to see what it was like to be in the building and to basically say, thank you, Russ, we appreciate everything that you've done. Because to be candid, I really don't remember a ton about the game. I just remember the buildup and it being Russell's return.
Well, this was early part of the season too, guys. I mean, when you look at January, and you start trying to get through that month and what that all entailed, a lot going on that night. A lot to be distracted about. Obviously, you guys all mentioned it. I won't repeat it, but the emotional part of that game, to get by that and then focus on basketball. It came down to really the Thunder just coming up with a solid win again against another team that's what, 25-12 coming in. You're at 22-16. You're trying to still hang on and keep your head above 500 waterline. And you come out and probably play one of your more dominant games of the season. You mentioned a big lead at the end of the 3 quarters. Matt, I thought that this game was over with in the first quarter, because the Thunder never let up. They were up 12 at halftime, 60-48, put up 60 points on the Rockets. The defense was solid. You only get 3 guys in double figures for the Rockets that night. You get 5 for the Thunder. James Harden, the leading scorer coming into the game, 38.5 a game. He gets 17, on 17 shot attempts, 17 points. So a lot of things that look like, well, maybe this was an anomaly, with all, of the really wonderful things that were going on, especially the debut of the City Edition uniforms. Russ obviously was huge making his debut, but to go out and play that kind of game, and really it became like your identity kind of a game. You defend, you get out and run when you can, you try to get off to a big start. You have that balance in your scoring throughout the night. You didn't let up. I mean, man, when you get up that big, that early in the game, it's easy to take an exhale and allow a team back in the game. I thought this was a solid win against a good Rockets team at the time that was playing good basketball. You had to deal with James Harden. Russell was Russell. I mean, certainly did his thing that night, but the Thunder came at him in numbers, and that eventually is what gave them the W at the end of the night, and a really boost of confidence, moving forward.
You guys know that when the playoff crowd files into Chesapeake Energy Arena and we kind of had that playoff atmosphere, it's like a 6-man on the defensive side of the floor for the Thunder. The space on the floor shrinks for the opponent. They're getting snippy at each other. They're firing the ball into the crowd by accident. What do you think that the Thunder did best defensively, particularly in that first half when they really gave the Rockets no hope?
Well,
I think it came down to limiting some of the secondary guys. I mean, Russ went for his 30-plus. I think that you would kind of expect that. But sort of the consistent effort on James Harden, he never got going, and he never got going early. I mean, I remember his first three, he was looking for a foul in typical James Harden fashion. So he never got going on the offensive end. They didn't have Eric Gordon. So some of those ancillary guys just weren't there to kind of pick up the slack. P.J. Tucker, he knocked down his first three, but never really got anything going. So if you limited those ancillary guys, there was no way that Russ was going to be able to carry the load by himself. And when the Thunder shoot 49% and come out of the gate shooting the way that they did, there was no way that the Rockets were going to keep up.
Well, I think too, probably the biggest thing with the Rockets, what you got to chase them off the line, right? It doesn't matter who's out there. They're all going to shoot threes. They got 5 guys out. We've talked about that type of offense. The Rockets were 11 of 40 from downtown. Love it. Okay. Anytime a team that relies so heavily on 3-point shooting and they take 40 shots. Now, Mike D'Antoni, what does he wants to take 60? He wants to get 60 shots up in one game. That's a good night for them. Well, if they're not falling, you're defending those shots, you're not fouling the 3-point shooters, where else they're going to go? I mean, they had 𝐓𝐡𝐿 that night. They had, different ways they can play in transition. We talked about Russ having a big game. But besides that, there's nowhere for the Rockets to go if they're not knocking down 3-point shots. And guess what? When you miss that many shots, 29 shots on threes, man, that's a big, big deficit you're going to put yourself in. And Thunder knew that, and they played that card all night.
Huge aspect of playing defense against Houston, Michael, is discipline. It's not just the getting to shooters on the 3-point line, but it's the ability to follow the ball around the horn or not overhelp when they go isolation with Westbrook or Harden. The discipline is in not fouling. Harden got to the foul line 5 times that night. That's his lifeblood offensively, is when he gets a defender on his heels and can, orchestrate that. Let me lock your arm with mine, and I get the call and get to the free throw line. That never occurred. Terrence Ferguson did an outstanding job against him to begin the night. That set the tone. Then the secondary aspect of when you play a team that jacks up that many threes, there are a lot of long rebounds if they're missing. You've got to be 5 in to rebound the basketball, get a body on whoever's closest to you, then go get the loose ball. The Thunder had a 52-39 rebounding advantage that night. So they did everything well. But it comes down to discipline. It doesn't just happen by osmosis to hold a Houston team that can score 130, 140 to 92. You got to be collectively connected. And it's got to be discipline that rules the night. And that's exactly what happened for this team. I give the Thunder a lot of credit because they also could have gotten lost in the emotion, in the atmosphere, and the excitement in the crowd. But it's tended to lock them in. And from the outset, they dominated that game. They outscored Houston by 10 in the third quarter, building on a 12-point lead, pushing it to 20, led by as many as 30. This was one of those games where it all really collectively came together. And everybody involved certainly deserves accolades for that.
All those defensive stops by the Thunder meant that they could just run out into transition and kind of flow into offense. And I just cannot get the image out of my mind of CP3 nutmegging Isaiah Hartenstein on the left side of the floor, floating a little runner. What plays do you remember, particularly offensively, from this game?
Oh, that one, Nick, because, Chris was like, okay, it's over. Like, that's it. That's it. Like, end it now. Bring the curtain down. This night is complete. That was one of the greatest moments, no question, of the season. I think that the balance offensively, this team sort of established itself that way early. They had 5 guys at 15-plus points, and it was a case of sharing the ball at a high level, not turning it over. So the assist-to-turnover ratio was really strong on the offensive end. They did a good job of keeping the Rockets off balance when they had the ball on the defensive end. So to me, those were more the images of the night than anything else. Again, I love seeing Russ play with the crowd, play with those that were courtside, play with some of the personnel on the Thunder bench, along with the players that he knew from his time in Oklahoma City. And I really give him credit. I thought he played the night perfectly, both before, during, and after. He was humble in defeat, but also very appreciative of the way the crowd accepted him and his fellow teammates and everybody else in the building.
Well, I thought it was a couple of moments for me. First one was at the start of the game when Russ does his, usual run to the crowd full speed and stop and look at him. I thought that was cool. All right, that was cool. And I'm gonna give James Harden. Sometimes I'm pretty hard on James Harden. I'm gonna give him his props. He wore the Thunder color blue shoes that night. I thought that was pretty cool too. All right, that's my second point. My third point was Mike D'Antoni. Mike's always working the officials. Now you're doing something right when Mike D'Antoni is not looking up at the scoreboard or over at the refs. He's just sitting there. You're doing something right. Because he's like going, all right, I can't argue anything that they're doing to me because it's not controversial. They are winning this game because they wanted more at that point. And I thought that was a big key as well. Things I remember about it was just Mike just in the second half completely backed off the officials. And, he works them pretty good, along with Russ acknowledging the crowd. I thought that was pretty classy on him because you know what? He's been here for 11 years and to see him do that, that caught me off guard, but I remembered it.
Yeah, Mike, he was quiet for pretty much the entire game from quarters 2 to 4 because that game was over. It was over in the first. The Thunder got up big. Danilo Gallinari, who wasn't a part of those Russell Westbrook teams, just kind of came in and knocked down those shots early in the first quarter and turned this game into a party. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about it. It was a party for the fans from start to finish in the anticipation, and they got to do it on their terms. And that was, I think, a fun night.
I think this was a really good opportunity from a big picture perspective to just look at the health of the Thunder franchise at this point in time. You make all the huge changes in the offseason, including trading away your franchise player in Russell Westbrook, and yet you go out, you've got a replenished roster, you have so many assets, you got a lot of young players as well, and you go out there and you just take care of business against a team that believes it was going to be in the top 2 or 3 in the Western Conference. So just another sign that good days are coming for this Thunder organization, and we can have them now too. Thanks, guys.